The train will arrive in 2 minutes. As I stood on a railway platform, marveling at the certainty of that announcement, a sort of thought experiment flashed through my head, and I thought, what if everything in life were as certain as that announcement? I'd know what I was going to wear next week, and I'd know that whether or not that train would be on time too. I'd know what diseases I'd suffer from, but that I'd be okay after treatment. I'd know what meals I'd eat, what conversations I'd have, the plays that I'd see, the books that I'd read, the places I'd see, and the friends I might lose, everything, right up to and including the day that I'd die. All uncertainty gone. Now, at first, of course, this was pretty attractive. The notion of knowing whether the train was going to be punctual or not was definitely appealing. But as the details started to accumulate, a sort of horror came over me. Life became just one giant to-do list, with every day a day to cross things off. So as much as we fear uncertainty, we should be wary. With complete certainty, we have no decisions to make, frictionless perhaps, but meaningless. Without uncertainty, there's no mystery, there's no prompt for agency or action. Without uncertainty, there is no freedom. So we would do better to embrace uncertainty as the defining characteristic of human life and human creativity. Are there people in the world who are good at this? At finding in uncertainty a motive for exploration, invention, and clarity? Yeah, they're artists. They start just with curiosity, a desire to see or to make something that's never been seen or made before. They spend much of their lives just wandering around. Artists as different as Virginia Woolf, Mark Ravenhill, Olga Tokarczuk, Soweto Kinch, all just wandering and noticing and picking up some details and sensing where the world might be today, tomorrow. It looks like they're doing nothing. But as the filmmaker Mike Leigh once said to me, nothing happening is something happening. Waiting for an idea, a concept to emerge is frightening. What happens if the idea never comes? What happens if it's terrible? But over time, the iron filings of all that noticing start to coalesce around a magnet of an idea. This is a dangerous moment. Time, opportunity cost, is not trivial. But sooner or later, a choice is made, often with no direction known. The thrillers of Lee Child, the novels of Murakami, A Murder Mystery by Olga Tokarczuk, all started with no plan and no plot. No idea of the good guy or the bad, whether the ending would be happy or sad. No concept of where it would go. The pleasure in the writing is exactly the same pleasure that we get in the reading, which is not knowing what comes next. Now decisions are being made all the time. This instrument, that color, that word, this note, every single one a decision which may open up possibilities or foreclose them. This takes energy, and it takes real nerve. So while the cliched view of the artist is rather feckless, lazy, undisciplined, the reality is exactly the opposite. Now what's needed is decisiveness and discipline. It takes courage, too. The painter Lubena Hamid once said, "Anybody who's ever painted a painting knows what a ludicrously difficult thing this is to do." What we see lies atop hours and hours, days or months of mistakes, corrections, revisions, redefinitions. The painter Faith Ringgold said she had to pray before she started a new painting, and Tracy Emin frequently sketches just to work up the courage to begin. All of this is difficult because nobody knows as they're working what it will become. When you're making something that nobody's ever seen or heard or read before, you can't help but think, as the writer Sebastian Barry said, it might turn out to be a pile of malodorous nonsense. You just have to consider the possibility. But when walking across ice, don't stop. Stamina, real stamina, is needed now. For some, it's intense but quick. When Miles Davis recorded Kind of Blue, it took just 2 sessions, although the band was working in a way they'd never worked before, with a producer that they'd never worked with before. The last track took just 1 take. But for Peter Flannery, working on his epic TV series, Our Friends in the North, it took 14 years. Years of disappointment, delay, frustration, while all his peers were making their names. Years that, he said to me, nearly broke him. Neither artist had any sense that they were making masterpieces, because there are no guarantees. Talk about uncertainty. There's no algorithm, there's no predictive method to know what kind of work is going to be a huge success, which the world will love, or whether it's something they'll like, or they'll ignore, or they'll despise. We may think that Caravaggio is an absolute rock star now, but in 1836, his Supper at Emmaus ended up in the National Gallery because nobody would buy it at auction. For centuries, King Lear went rarely performed. It was too dark, too dismal, too difficult. Until in the 20th century, there it was, just waiting for us, portraying a world we really could recognize now. So there are no guarantees. And when the work is finished, artists change. The work that they make changes who they are and what they see now. Why repeat yourself when you could go on exploring, inventing, discovering? Forget brand you. Gerhard Richter turned from luscious figurative oils and now works with glass and steel. Suito Kinch has gone from jazz to rap to orchestral. These changes come at a real cost. Many of Miles Davis's fans never forgave him his electric years, while Bob Dylan's fans took a long time to realize that change is the point, that the developing self is Dylan's subject, that it is in exploration, experimentation, and change that artists express their freedom. Curiosity, the ability to start before being asked and without any guarantees. Discipline, energy, patience, nerve, stamina, change. These are the qualities that an age of uncertainty now demands from us. The ability to respond with the ingenuity that is in every single one of us to a world that cannot be predicted. It's one reason why the World Economic Forum's job report says that now the most essential skills that we all need to have are critical thinking and creative thinking. Yet what do I hear from employers? They go out to hire young people who are ostensibly well-educated, clearly well-credentialed, and then they complain. They don't know how to do anything. They need so much instruction. They cannot think for themselves. I'm reminded of visiting a classroom of 8-year-olds who were doing a project about the Amazon rainforest, and the walls were covered with printouts that the kids had cut and pasted entries from Wikipedia. While outside on the lawn One single student had pitched a tent and filled it with papier-mâché animals and trees and birds and flowers, accompanied by a soundtrack of Amazonian birdsong. Marked down because it lacked detail. For too long, we have said to our kids, you really have to focus early. You really have to get ready for that test. You really have to chase the grades. Arts are dismissed. They're just useless and impractical. Right? This is what you need to know now, as our young people are turned into units of economic production for a machine that we used to call society. Arts are discouraged. All the old cliches roll in, that they're impractical, they're useless, you'll never make a living being creative. And kids are poured into tracks that are too narrow. This year, in the United States, the largest group of unemployed graduates studied computer science. Oh, sorry, the world changed. When what we need are multidisciplinary thinkers who can collaborate, who can investigate, who are driven by curiosity, a love of learning, to address with nerve and courage the immense difficulties that are facing us today. Even as arts funding plummets and arts enrollment plummets, as the access to the arts, to live music, live theater, museums, and libraries decline, the evidence keeps coming up again and again, and it's always the same, that greater participation in the arts makes our children's performance at school and capacity at school much better in every subject. That art is good for people of all ages, for kids, for adolescents, for adults, for elderly people. That it improves our concentration, our communication, our capacity to imagine, to communicate, our physical health, our mental health, and that it staves off depression and dementia. It's past time to see that we don't need better machines. What we need now is what artists have: the capacity to respond with creativity to the unexpected and unknown. Because it's one thing to have freedom. It's quite another thing to know how to use it. And that's what artists develop. And while we may not all be artists, we can learn to think like artists, with eyes that wander and seek out anomalies and details, with curiosity that's drawn towards ambiguity and paradox, with minds that really like to think without banisters. In their work, artists see, and we could see in ourselves, who they are and where we are, what we could become and where we're going. The revitalization of human creativity is no small task, but we have, all of us, all the ingredients that we need. We just need to start and keep going. Thank you.